On March 29, 2025, the Ugandan government signed a deal with a UAE investment firm to build a $4 billion oil refinery with a capacity of 60,000 barrels per day. This historic agreement will not only let Uganda meet its domestic fuel needs, but also start exporting petroleum products. What's remarkable is that by 2023, the United Arab Emirates had become the top source of foreign direct investment in Africa, overtaking traditional heavyweights like China, the EU and the United States. In just 4 years, the UAE pumped $110 billion into the continent, while the US invested only $17 billion. But this rapid economic push into Africa brings major challenges. By stepping into this arena, the UAE is competing with global powers that are hardly pleased to see a new influential player emerge. But politics is never a fair game. Beneath the surface of this investment boom lie tough questions. What's really driving the UAE's surge in funding? How does such a small Gulf state manage to go toe-to-toe with the world's leading powers? Are their gains sustainable, and what risks does it pose for the Emirates and their African partners? Africa is still a largely untapped trove of resources. By some estimates, the continent holds about 30% of the world's mineral reserve. 8% of global gas, 12% of oil, 40% of gold, and up to 90% of both chrome and platinum. Add a huge consumer market, little local competition, and solid economic growth, and it's easy to see why foreign governments and companies are interested. In recent years, Africa has become another front in the rivalry between East and West. On the downside, this means more political tension, but on the upside, it helps local countries attract foreign capital. China's global investment tracker puts Beijing at the top, with more than $97 billion invested in Africa from 2006 to 2022. The UN Conference on Trade and Development says the top cumulative investors are Western Europe, the United Kingdom, France and the Netherlands. The US invested $17 billion over the past 5 years, but now plans to add another $55 billion. Recently, though, a new heavyweight entered the ring. According to The Guardian, by late 2024, the UAE had become Africa's biggest project investor. From 2019 to 2023, UAE companies announced $110 billion in projects, making them the continent's #1 investor. Keep in mind, these numbers aren't apples to apples. They cover different timeframes and sometimes include planned investments, not just completed ones. Still, even after adjusting for that, it's clear that Abu Dhabi had become a key player in Africa. The UAE's approach is all about diversifying its economy. Back in late 90s and early 2000s, the country's leaders realized they were too dependent on oil and gas. So in 1996, the UAE joined the World Trade Organization, and in 2004 it signed free trade deals with Singapore and New Zealand, moves that opened new markets and access to tech. As African economies became more connected to the global market, their big domestic markets and growing export revenues caught the eye of foreign investors. Spotting the opportunity, the UAE boosted its investment in Africa from $1.5 billion in 2010 to $11 billion by 2022. Top destinations included Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, and South Africa. Competition in India, Pakistan, China, and Southeast Asia, the UAE's former favorites, has only heated up, so the shift to Africa made sense. Before launching new partnerships, the Emirates spent time mapping out each market and pinpointing government officials interested in working with Abu Dhabi. Those officials got tailor-made commercial offers and in return agreed to deals that favored the UAE. These arrangements were usually finalized during formal visits, after which an Emirati company, typically with strong government ties, would win a concession in a key sector. For example, in 2018, DP World inked a $1.1 billion deal to modernize and expand Senegal's Dakar port after government talks. Similar deals happened in Egypt around logistics centers near the Suez Canal. Their strategy included clustering, bringing together interlinked businesses and industries in one area to amplify results. In Tanzania, the UAE invested in a logistics cluster around Dar es Salaam port, building terminals, warehouses, and service companies. Initially, the focus was on transport and logistics, ports and railroads. Later, they expanded into finance, energy, tourism, and agriculture. Early projects included the upgrade of Maputo port in Mozambique, Morocco's Noor solar plant, a tourism complex in Kenya, and a financial center in Lagos. After the first concession, the UAE typically branched out into other sectors to strengthen each cluster and with it their influence. The deal between DP World and Somaliland's authorities to create a 15 square kilometers free economic zone at the Berbera port, serving the Horn of Africa's 140 million people, shows this strategy in action. The UAE put about $442 million into the port and surrounding area, building warehouses, offices, and infrastructure. At the same time, they secured the right to set up a military base on the Gulf of Aden, ramping up their clout in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So how does a small Gulf country manage to beat out giants like the US and China? A few reasons stand out. First, speed. Take the Ugandan refinery deal. Years earlier, Ugandan officials held similar talks with US investors, but those talks fell apart due to endless American delays. Second, risk appetite. Since 2022, the US and China have stepped back from Africa's big-ticket projects, getting more cautious about mega investments. The Emirates, meanwhile, are willing to take bold bets. On February 23, 2024, the UAE and Egypt signed the largest bilateral investment agreement in history, around $35 billion, to develop the Ras Al Khaimah coastal area. That one deal is more than double the entire US investment portfolio for Africa over the last 5 years. Big picture politics matter too. On March 14, 2024, The Economist ran a story called "The Gulf Scramble for Africa is Reshaping the Continent." The article called the UAE a loose cannon, arming warlords, sowing chaos, and serving as a haven for corrupt elites. According to the piece, the success of Emirati business projects often relies on tacit military backing from powerful figures like Libya's Khalifa Haftar, Sudan's General Hemeti, Chad's interim president Mohamed Deby, and Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The Economist also accuses the UAE of fueling corruption in Africa, claiming they've built a haven for African elites wanting to hide their cash. Oxford professor Ricardo Soares de Oliveira says the UAE acts as a financial center for Africa's elite to stash their money. Many Africans don't trust their own economies, so they park funds in the Emirates, often through shell companies and bank accounts that only exist on paper. This keeps dollar revenues out of African economies and blocks capitals from returning home. So far, the UAE hasn't hit many roadblocks with its African strategy. But that could change. Their aggressive approach carries both economic and political risks. Multi-billion-dollar bets on huge projects like Ras Al Khaimah in Egypt offer big rewards if they pay off. But they also come with huge risks, especially in today's shaky global economy. Delays, cost overruns, or failures could mean losing billions and damaging the UAE's standing in the region. The Emirates' growing military and diplomatic footprint is also raising tensions with other major players, such as Turkey, China, and the West. This is especially true around the Red Sea, a vital shipping lane between Europe and Asia. The UAE's willingness to work with controversial armed groups and regimes accused of human rights abuses, plus its ties to corruption, puts its reputation on the line. This has already led to a conflict with Sudan's government and the cancellation of a $6 billion Red Sea port contract. Cozying up to unrecognized states brings complications too. Deals with Somaliland and the expansion of the UAE's military presence there have triggered protests from Somalia's government and its ally, Turkey. The Horn of Africa is already unstable, and a new player's involvement risks making things worse. Likewise, friction with neighboring Djibouti over the UAE's military base in Eritrea could threaten access to key Red Sea shipping routes. The UAE has made real gains across Africa thanks to a pragmatic, development-focused strategy backed by quick action, bold decisions, and tight relationship with Africa's elites. But those same strengths also create risk. The UAE's expansion isn't about brute force. It is about targeted business deals, backroom arrangements with select elites, and a steadily growing military presence. Persuasive talk, deep pockets, and a big stick. That's the formula the Emirates have brought to African politics.